Hi everybody and welcome to Heel Heat. My name is George Coles. This is a Heel Heat Top 10. Now the topic of this Top 10 is in honor of Halloween this week. These are the Top 10 Halloween Havoc Matches. Let's go right into it. The first one, our number 10 match, is Ron Simmons versus the Barbarian from Halloween Havoc 1992. Ron Simmons with a successful defense of his title. I thought this was one of the better matches of Ron Simmons' title run. Barbarian brought a certain physicality that matched up very well with him, and this was a great match. One of the early Halloween Havocs, one of the real highlights of the show. Again, another one of the highlights of Ron Simmons' title run. Now our number 9 match is Steve Austin, then known as Stunning Steve Austin, versus Dustin Rhodes, who would become Gold Dust, from 1991, where they went to a TV title time limit draw. Now, if you guys are old enough to remember, the TV title had a 15-minute match. This really was a precursor of the stardom that both guys would go on to have later on. Austin becoming one of the biggest stars in wrestling, Dustin Rhodes having major success as Gold Dust. Awesome match, really great coming out party for the two, as you would say. You could see the future potential between the two in this match, and it did not disappoint. Loved it. I loved the concept of the 15-minute draw. I loved the television title having that time limit on it. It was a great match. Now our number 8 match is from, I would say, the last good Halloween Havoc. The last couple were pretty bad. Was Rey Mysterio Jr. versus Eddie Guerrero. Ray's mask versus the Cruiserweight Championship. Of course, Ray picks up the win. If you watch WCW during the time, the Cruiserweight title and the Cruiserweight division was the real excitement of the show. I mean, stuff like the NWO storylines drew you in, but the Cruiserweights were the action that you were looking for, that kept you interested, that gave you that breakneck pace. For all of you people that have caught the tail end of Mysterio's career in the last 5-6 years or so, he's nowhere near as innovative and as great as he once was. Back in '97, it was probably right around the height of his innovation, and Eddie Guerrero, what can you say about the guy? I don't think he's ever had a bad match anywhere. Another one of those awesome Cruiserweight title matches. The division, I think it's one of the main reasons why WCW was so successful at the time. Now, coming off of that, our number 7. This is the first appearance of a couple guys that you're going to see a lot on this show. Sting and Ric Flair tag teaming up against Arn Anderson and Brian Pillman. The storyline on this is Pillman and Arn attacking Sting, attacking Flair. Flair was in a feud with Arn Anderson, believe it or not. They go into this match. Flair convinces Sting to let him be his partner. Flair ends up screwing over Sting. Sting and Flair winning by disqualification due to that. Flair joins Arn Anderson and Brian Pillman. They reform the Four Horsemen. This was from 1995. Great match, great psychology, great build-up. Great storyline moving forward. I liked everything about that. Now, coming off of that, from our number 6 match is from Halloween Havoc 1992. Sting versus Jake the Snake Roberts, coal miner's glove match. A little bit of a convoluted style, but you had Sting really starting to reach the levels of superstardom that would come later for him, and at this time he was really hot as well, against Jake the Snake Roberts, an established star that everybody knew. A lot of WWE fans knew. It was the beginning of some of the WWE guys cross-mingling and coming over to WCW. Sting and Jake put on a great match. It was basically a lead glove on top of a pole. Whoever got it got to use it. A lot of the matches on Halloween Havocs were very convoluted, as this one was, but the ring psychology between two of the all-time greats that were in there really showed out and made this the match that it was. A very good match. Probably, I would say this is one of Sting's best of his careers, as well as one of Jake the Snake's best of his career. Now, coming up, our number 5 match. Second time appearance for Brian Pillman, him versus Ricky Morton in the lightweight championship finals all the way back in 1991. Lightweight division was a precursor to the cruiserweight division. Same kind of style, same kind of thing. They started trying to incorporate it way back in 91. They had a tournament. This was your finals. This was Flying Brian Pillman, full babyface turn, full of charisma. Ricky Morton, of course, one of the all-time tag team greats and also a great wrestler on his own. Great match between the two. Pillman picks up the win, becomes your first light heavyweight champion. Again, a precursor to what would happen with the cruiserweight division a little bit later on in WCW's history, but one of the real shining moments of the light heavyweight title back in that time frame. Now, our number 4 has, for the second time in a row, Ricky Morton, aka Richard Morton, and Thomas Rich, at that time parts of the York Foundation, versus the Midnight Express of Beautiful Bobby Eaton and Sweet Stan Lane, way back in 1990. Richard Morton picked up the win over the Midnights when they used Jim Cornette's tennis racket against them. Great tag team match. From about 1987 to about 1993, the tag team division in WCW and Jim Crockett Promotions, which basically became WCW, the tag team division was so hot, so highly contested. You had a bunch of great teams like the Midnight Express, the Road Warriors, the Steiner Brothers, Doom, Skyscrapers, Tommy Rich and Ricky Morton, the Rock and Roll Express. I mean, there was tons and tons of talent coming in and out of that division, and this is one of the real highlights. That tag team match is one of the great tag team matches. It's not mentioned by a lot of people historically. Most people know Richard Morton, Ricky Morton's feud with the Midnights when he was part of the Rock and Roll Express, but this was a little bit of a different turn to it. The Midnight Express were the faces at the time. Thomas Rich, and Richard Morton were the heels. They pick up the win. It was a great match, one of the matches that I think has been forgotten by history. I'd love to see this come out on a compilation at some point. Maybe they do a Halloween Havoc compilation. I'd love to see that, because as you can see, there's a ton of great matches from that show, or from the pay-per-view. Now our number 3 comes to us from Halloween Havoc 93. That would be Big Van Vader versus Cactus Jack in a Texas death match. What can you say? I think Vader and Cactus was one of the great feuds in WCW, one that they didn't really explore too much. They could have done so much more with each other. Cactus was a guy that Vader could be as brutal and vicious as he wanted to. Vader was a guy that could have Cactus become a sympathetic character and, taking the beatings. It was, they meshed so well with each other. Cactus could go full bore on Vader, Vader could go full bore on Cactus. I mean, what more can you say about this feud? Vader ends up winning, hits a powerbomb on the stage, followed by his manager at the time, Handsome Harley Race, one of the all-time greats, using a stun gun to keep Cactus Jack down for the 10 count as per the rules of the Texas Death Match. Vader wins. Solid World Championship match. Solid feud. I wish they would have done more with, but unfortunately they didn't. Which leads us right into our number 2 match. From the first Halloween Havoc, 1999, Ric Flair and Sting versus the Great Muta and Terry Funk in the Thunderdome cage match. Now, if you're not familiar with the Thunderdome cage match, it was used this time, and they used this cage structure a couple other times in different gimmicks. Basically, imagine Hell in a Cell with no roof, so it went out past the ring almost to the guardrails. The cage at the top was electrified, and it came in kind of like a roof awning, so you couldn't climb out of the cage, and even if you tried, you would get electrified. There's a couple instances a towel gets caught up in the cage and Muta actually has to spray the mist to put out the towel. Really good stuff here. You got 4 of the all-time greats in the history of wrestling. The great Muta, if anybody's followed his career between WCW, NWA, and what he's done in Japan, what can you say about the guy? One of the greatest wrestlers from Japan that there has been. Terry Funk, absolute icon, one of the true legends of wrestling, one of the inventors of the hardcore wrestling style. Ric Flair, what can you say about Flair? Probably the greatest world champion of all time in any federation. And the Stinger, you know, Sting here was starting to get the rub. Flair and Sting actually pick up the win when Gary Hart, another great that's somewhat forgotten with time, the manager of Muta and Funk at the time, throws in the towel, which was part of the stipulations. This was the time, I believe, and I might be wrong about this, but they were recruiting Sting into kind of they were recruiting Sting as a 4 Horsemen member. It was Flair, Sting, Arn Anderson, and Barry Windham, with Ole Anderson as their manager, and Ole was on the side of Flair and Sting. I don't know if they were quite yet the Horsemen, or that would come a little bit later. But all in all, a great match for the first Halloween Havoc, a way to put it at, give it a great ending, give the fans what they wanted. I mean, it was absolutely awesome. I thought everybody involved was amazing. It was a great main event for their first show, or first pay-per-view, or first pay-per-view of this name. Sorry, folks. Now, coming off of that, if you've seen our top 10s before, you know we do a little thing called the best of the rest. Basically, these are the matches that didn't quite make the top 10 for whatever reason. All great matches as well. The first being Dean Malenko versus Rey Mysterio in 1996, Cruiserweight Championship match. This is a match most famous for Dean Malenko hitting the powerbomb off the top rope for the finish and retaining his Cruiserweight title. Awesome match, again, like I said before, with the Cruiserweight division. I thought it was one of the great things about WCW was their Cruiserweight division. And another great thing, which we've talked about before already, from the 1990 card, which is also the same one that our tag team match at the number 4 spot came from, the Fabulous Freebirds, at that time Jimmy Garvin and Michael P.S. Hayes, versus the Renegade Warriors, Chris and Mark Youngblood. This match was amazing. Freebirds pick up the win. They were being built up better at the time. Chris and Mark Youngblood didn't really have a long run in WCW, and this is kind of, again, another one of those matches that's forgotten in time, but it goes to show the greatness of the tag team division at the time. I mean, you had 2 fantastic tag team matches on the same card, and this one didn't disappoint either. Now, another one for the best of the rest was also from the 1990 show, which I think was the best of the Halloween Havoc shows altogether when you put it together as one. Sting defending the World Heavyweight Championship versus Sid Vicious. This is when Sid was part of the 4 Horsemen. They go to the back. Sid Sid injures Sting. For whatever reason, I couldn't say that word. Which leads us to Sid bringing Sting back to the ring, pinning him, only to find Sting coming back from the back to reveal that the Sting that Sid Vicious pinned was a fake Sting, actually being portrayed by Barry Windham. Sting takes over, gets the belt, or goes back into full babyface mode. Guess you could say stinging up. Beats Sid Vicious, who at the time was a really serious contender for the world title, and one of the first really big men that could move around like him, himself and The Undertaker, real innovators in the style that they were using then. Sid wasn't your run-of-the-mill factory older style big guy who would just use rest holds. He was willing to go in there and wrestle with you. And basically, that's what we have for our best of the rest. Before we go into our number one, I just want to let you guys know, if you think we put something up too high, if you think we rank something too low, if there's some matches that we left off altogether, let us know what you think. Hit us up on our Facebook, hit us up on Twitter, put it down where? Down in the comments. And now we're getting into our number one Halloween Havoc matchup. Everybody should be figured this out by now. Randy Macho Man Savage versus Diamond Dallas Page from Halloween Havoc 1997. Right in the midst of, I would say, one of Savage's greatest feuds and DDP's greatest feud. This is a feud that really took DDP and put him on the map as someone that could be a world champion going forward and a serious contender going forward. Savage took him. He took Savage all the way to his limits. The only reason Savage wins is because Hollywood Hogan, dressed up as Sting, hits DDP with a bat. I believe it was under Texas Deathmatch rules where DDP had to answer the 10 count, but he did not. Savage retains in an absolutely fantastic match. One of the matches that really put DDP's career on track, and another one of the many, many great matches that Randy Macho Man Savage left us in his career. And before we go off of this, I'd like to say, if you're intrigued at all by any of these matches, I don't know how many of them are on YouTube, but try and look them up because some of these are really great, especially if you haven't seen any of them before. I think the Vader and Cactus Jack is on one of Mick Foley's DVDs. I want to say a couple of the other ones are on various DVDs out there. But really look this stuff up. If you haven't seen any of these matches before, you will not be disappointed. But basically, that's all I have to say about that. My name is George Coles, and this has been a Heel Heat Top 10.